So, Sri Akal, welcome to I'm a Brown Girl. My name's Amma. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about ADHD and generally being on the spectrum, especially in the Desi community. I just want to mention, if you're watching my podcast through YouTube, the lighting is going to be a little bit temperamental because I sit in front of a window and I've tried to set my camera on automatic to kind of regulate the lighting, but the sun is absolutely beaming on my face. So there's going to be points in this episode where I look super bright and then I look super dull. So just don't mind that. The reason I want to talk about today's topic is because I realized that I have family members who are definitely on the spectrum, and it helped me forgive them in ways that I didn't consider before, as well as the fact that I was speaking to a couple of my friends in terms of their mental health, my mental health, and I want to share my experience of that and just how difficult it can be. And I think that it's something that isn't spoken about enough, especially in the Desi community. There are so many people that are probably on the spectrum who didn't have the opportunity to access that knowledge or education. So it's really important to highlight this topic. To be clear, I'm not diagnosed to be on the spectrum in any way. I'm not a doctor. I don't trust TikTok in terms of the advice that it gives. I think they do have good information. There is a lot more awareness, and it's good that it's more spoken about openly. However, it's not a credible source because you never really can trust these TikTok pages and who's really presenting and if they are actually qualified. But either way, there are a lot of relatable things that have been shared over social media that I'm like, that feels very familiar. I can relate with that. And at some point in my life, I think I would like to get checked out just to kind of help me understand myself a little bit better. Oh my God, you can actually see my face now if you're watching. Finally, the sun is not beaming in my face. Anyway, ADHD, ADD, autism, just being on the spectrum in general is a lot more spoken about, which is amazing, especially in the workplace. It's acknowledged a lot more, which is great. But I don't know, I think with corporate, it will always just be a tick box exercise. They kind of have to have accountability in terms of teaching their employees about neurodiversity, but will kind of see it as a tick box exercise to just, make their company look good. But hey, that's a separate conversation. But at least it's good that they're taking some sort of acknowledgement to be like, oh, how can we make our workplaces a little bit more easier for those who are neurodiverse? I was speaking to a really good friend the other day about their diagnosis, and they went through work to find out they had ADHD, which is amazing in terms of the fact that the workplace was supportive. And I think they kind of cover half the cost and then they had to cover the other rest of the cost, which is fine. But they were saying how it's so difficult having an ADHD brain in a neurotypical world where you are made to feel like you need to be normal when the only normal you know is your ADHD brain. So why should you have to dim yourself down to be normal when this is the only reality you know? And normal is so subjective because then it makes you feel like, oh, am I crazy? Am I not normal? But that's not the case. I was also speaking to another really good friend and they were saying how they don't feel normal, that they really struggle socially, even though they have an incredible personality. I get on with them. We're like two peas in a pod. But they were asking me like, Amma, am I like not normal? Like, have I been weird over the past few months or year or whatever? And I was like, no, like you're absolutely fine. Socially, you're great. It's just some people don't understand you and that's not your fault. And living with that can be really difficult because imagine feeling confused as to why there's no one like me or why there's no one talk to me or why am I treated differently when the only reality you know is the way you are. It's not your fault that people treat you differently or the fact that they don't understand you. That's on them. For me personally, I have an inner monologue 24/7 to the point where even when I'm sleeping, I'm still talking to myself. Like I talk to my inner monologue all the time. I have different types of monologues actually in terms of depends on what language, depends on what mood. I've never known what it feels like to have a calm mind or not have an inner monologue. Like that would be quite scary for me. But the more work I've put into understanding myself and my mental health, I am able to feel a lot better within myself and navigate through social cues, I guess. And socially, I'm pretty good. Like I am quite a sociable person. I don't struggle with social cues, but at the same time, I really struggle to have conversations with people who lack depth. And that doesn't mean that they're dense. It's just, I really like deep conversations. That obviously doesn't mean that I'm on the spectrum or that means I definitely have ADHD. That could just be me as a person. But there are so many other things that I've realized that made me think that, I don't think I'm neurotypical, to say the least. In terms of being on the spectrum in the Desi community, I think it's definitely seen under the umbrella term of mental health. I think in my parents' generation and older, there's a lack of understanding and education around it. I'm going to generalize here and say the older generation of Desis because I do think the younger generation are a lot more clued up with mental health and being on the spectrum. But if the older generation was better educated and had understanding, there'd be less judgment and people would be able to deal with their emotions a lot better. I think for me, especially when I was younger, I was always told to shut up because I was such a yapper. I'd talk to anyone and anything. So, God forbid I talk too much and have a personality. But maybe if my parents had a better understanding of being on the spectrum, they would have understood that maybe she is just a bit more quirky and has a more active mind. Even the other week, me and my mum went to the Nagar Kirtan. If you don't know what a Nagar Kirtan is, it is a massive parade that happens across the UK and in countries where there's a massive Sikh following. So you go there, there's loads of food, there's drinks just being given out on the streets. Everyone is welcome to go, doesn't matter what your religion or background is. And they parade the holy book around the streets and everyone prays. It's a wonderful celebration to be around and experience. Anyway, so when I was in the parade with my mum and my relatives, it was quite crowded, it was really loud, and I had already explained to my mum before that, hey, I feel like I'm going to get overwhelmed. And to be fair, I've put in a lot of effort recently to educate my parents around how I am and my mental health, and they've been really taking it in, and I really appreciate that. So I had said to my mum, I feel really overwhelmed, and she was like, right, let's go. And instantly, we went back home and it was all fine. And she didn't make a big deal about it. But I could see how in the past, without her knowing that information, she would have been a bit like, what's wrong with you? But now that she understands me, I feel a lot more validated and I don't feel insane. And I'm not trying to self-diagnose myself because I'll never know unless I actually get a diagnosis. But I don't know. I feel like the hardest thing about this is it just how I am as a person, or is something wrong with me? And I don't know if people who question if they're on the spectrum feel like that, but I'm sure they do. And if you do, and you're listening to this and you feel like, yeah, that's pretty normal, let me know because I feel a bit crazy sometimes. So I don't know. Even with my parents, I've seen certain things about them just in terms of their behavior that makes me question, are you not? So with my dad, he barely listens unless I tell him to, and not in a rude way, but I really have to be like, Dad, are you listening? And he'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm listening. I'm just like, no, you're not listening. And before I'd get really offended about it because I'll just be like, every time I talk to you, why do you not listen? But then when I kind of gave him a bit more grace and was thinking that maybe he just has a hard time with attention and I just have to get his attention, he was a lot more willing to listen. And now that I do that, he actually listens. So it made me think, are you? But that's just one example. He also zones out all the time. He doesn't like change. He can be a tad bit blunt sometimes. He likes things to be a certain way, and his social cues can be a little bit off sometimes. With my mum, she can yap for a country, and I see where I get it from, but it's to the point where it's just like, okay, we get it. Okay, you're still talking. And before I'd get quite irritated, I guess, and be like, oh my God, do you just not shut up? But I think apart from her actually just wanting to talk to someone and, wanting to have a good conversation, I think she hasn't got the social cues to understand that she's speaking a lot. And that's fine. I understand her now, but before I'd get really irritated. She also has highs and lows with emotions, but who knows if that's just menopause. She needs routine, a bit like me, and she's very clean, which is also like me. But it's to the point where I deep clean my room once a week, at least once a week. And if things are not in a certain way in terms of my room, I get really irritated. Even the other day, there was a fox in my house because where I live, the foxes are quite domesticated. People feed them. I'm telling you, they're about 10 years away from being a household pet. Anyway, the fox had gone through the bin, kind of rummaged around my kitchen. I did not realize until we kind of put two and two together and there was a bit of like fox pee. So I was like, mm. And the OCD in my brain, I was literally in tears because I was so overwhelmed. I grabbed the bleach. I had to bleach down my entire kitchen. I couldn't even cook. I mean, the normal thing to do is obviously to clean, but I'm talking like I deep cleaned everything again. And if I had just done a light clean, I would have not been able to cook. I mean, is that just hygiene and being Asian and having common sense? Or is that like an incapability of like doing anything without cleaning? I don't know. Do you see what I mean? I'm constantly trying to figure out like, is that just common sense? Or like, am I not normal? And I cried about it as well because I was so overwhelmed. Anyway, do you see what I mean? The point I'm trying to make is that, yes, I'm not a doctor, but I see really clear signs of neurodiversity amongst my family members and relatives and within myself. But I'm constantly doubting myself to know if that's just a personality trait or is that neurodiversity. And with my parents and family, I'm able to give them a lot more grace and understand what they need for better communication and to regulate their emotions, as well as educating them has helped me have a better relationship with them. I don't know what kind of tism I have, but I know I have some type of something on the spectrum, and I'll only know when I get a diagnosis. I'm glad that as our generation, we do talk about it a lot more, and the older generation are being made aware of neurodiversity a lot more, which is amazing, especially in the workplace, even though at times, yes, it is a tick box exercise. But hey, at least we're one step in the right direction. And I'm sure that in the future, there will be a lot more training required to be able to have better understanding for people who are neurodiverse and how to help them in the workplace, how to help them through life, and how to make it a little bit more easier for them, because there's so many people out here just living life thinking that they're insane or not normal when the only normal they know is their brain, which is their reality. How can you tell someone who's neurodiverse to be like, oh, you need to be normal when that's the only normal they know? The fact that I go out of my way to educate myself and learn more about myself and my brain has helped me become less angrier and given myself a lot of grace as well, because at times when I have big emotions and, I feel things very deeply, I'm not so hard on myself because I remind myself that this is just how my brain is. I don't think like a typical person. I'm not able to just move on from things. I need to feel it, process it, have a moment, talk about it 20 times before I can be like, okay, fine, this happened, next. I hope by having this conversation, it's made you think about your parents and family as to, are they on the spectrum? Is being more aware of neurodiversity going to help you be understanding of how to deal with them better, or how you can help them understand their emotions better? It's really hard to put your finger on it without an actual diagnosis, but it's good that there's more conversation around it, that people are a lot more aware. And I think the more conversations we have with our family who are Desi or people of color, it's going to just help them. If you have any stories or experience with neurodiversity, ADHD, ADD, autism, just being on the spectrum in general, and you would like to share, please drop me a DM. I would love to hear your stories. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I feel like it was very surface level, very chill, not too deep, and more conversational, which I quite enjoyed, because I think at times planning episodes and, even talking about some of the topics that I do takes a lot of energy and a lot of brain power. So I think today I've kind of enjoyed just having more of like a surface level conversation and not having to think too much. And again, in terms of end of episode check-in, if you're watching, can we just appreciate the lip liner? I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if that will focus. Let's see. I've done like a red brown kind of thing and I really like it. I feel really pretty today. I've woken up, had a really slow morning, showered, prayed, did a gratitude manifestation ritual. So that was nice. And I've recorded now. I feel good. Nothing is new. No life updates. I am happy, thriving, and I hope that you are too. That brings me to the end of my episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for making it this far. I really appreciate the engagement. I hope you learned something. I hope you could relate. I hope it sparks you to go and speak to your family and friends about their mental health. If there's anything you want to hear more about, drop me a DM, share your story. It's all a safe space here. I thank you for watching. I thank you for listening. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Sat Sri Akal. Bye.